Welcome, Husky fans, and good evening. Thank you for tuning in to the 30th episode of Husky Dash. I'm your host, Nathan Mathisen, and today I'm going to be talking about how the Pac 12 as a whole overall did surprisingly well so far in March Madness in the NCAA tournament. After that, I'll get back into Husky football, talking about the running back position room and how that's shaping up. I'll then get into talking about which new player I feel will be making the biggest impact or have the shot at making the biggest impact this next season for Husky football. Feel free to leave any comments or questions you have in the chat, and I'll make sure to get to them. Before getting into the first topic, a bit of Husky news, Husky basketball news. Eric Stevenson announced that he was going to be transferring. He transferred last year from Wichita State to UW. And in my opinion, it never really worked out for him here. Last year, he only averaged 9.3 points per game, 3.6 rebounds, and 2.1 assists, which was one of the leaders on the team. But overall, I think people expected more from him, and he didn't quite deliver. A loss that I think will be bigger felt by the Husky basketball team is Marcus Sahonis. Also announced that he was transferring. He did that just today. Sahonis really developed quite nicely as the season went on last year. He really filled in for Quade during games Green missed, especially that Washington State game where Sahonis ended up hitting the game-winning shot. As a whole, Sahonis kind of was the only other guy on the Husky team that could create his own shot and score by himself. So that's going to be a big loss for the Huskies, as overall the Huskies have now lost 4 of their top 5 scorers from the past year's team. So I really don't know where they're going to be replacing that scoring. Now getting into no Husky news, but just the Pac-12 as a whole in the NCAA tournament, as obviously the Huskies didn't make it, but 5 other teams did, and 4 of those 5 teams are now in the Sweet 16. So how exactly did that happen? I mean, the Pac-12 going into it was kind of overlooked the whole way. Nobody really gave the Pac-12 respect on the national level for basketball, really any sport for that matter. But trying to justify, I guess you could say, no Pac-12 school throughout the regular season in basketball was really that exciting. The best record-wise in the Pac-12 was Oregon at 21-6. So, I mean, not a bad record, but not like a stunning record. Gonzaga undefeated. Baylor, I think, was 24-2 or something like that. Now, another thing is you look at other schools, though, like the Big Ten. Big Ten came in with so much hype looking at, and in the March tournament, they kind of flopped. They had done good. So why did the Big Ten get so much hype when you look at it? The first team in their conference is Michigan, 22-4 record, and then Illinois, who was a 1 seed, who's in the tournament, got booted by Loyola Chicago, I believe. They were 24-7, or it's 21-6 as a 6 seed, 7 seed, something like that. Well, Illinois is 24-7 as a 1 seed. Iowa's a 2 seed at 22-9. I mean, I can look at all these other major conferences really, and the top team either has a marginally better record than the Pac-12's top team, or it's just about the same. What I think really hurt the Pac-12 schools as their reputation or just national attention is that they're on the West Coast. And let's face it, everyone on the East Coast doesn't really care about the Pac-12 West Coast games. You look at Pac-12 basketball games starting at 6 or 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. East Coast people aren't going to be watching that or staying up to watch a Pac-12 basketball game. Another thing that hurt the Pac-12 was a lot of these teams that made the tournament, they hadn't been at full strength all year long. Look at a team like Oregon. Possibly their best player in guard, Will Richardson, he missed a lot of games towards the middle of the year after having thumb surgery. He's back now and he's playing great basketball and really helping Oregon win these games. UCLA lost their best guard. I know these guards that UCLA has now playing, those 3 guys, they've been playing great basketball, but you look at it as they lost their best one or projected as their best one back January 3rd, I think it was. At the start of January, Chris Smith for them tore his ACL, a senior for them. And then USC hasn't had really too many injuries, but they're led by a freshman, Evan Mobley. And as everyone knows, freshmen can have off nights. It can take time for them to develop into the college basketball game and really get comfortable. Can have rough games here and there. So now with Evan Mobley more comfortable in college basketball and USC just having that great defense, they've started to shine. Now Oregon State, I mean, I guess they didn't get national respect probably because they didn't really deserve it. They had some bad losses at the start of the year. And even in the middle of the year, they didn't really do great. And they made the tournament by ending very strongly and winning the Pac-12 tournament. Why I think the Pac-12 was ignored for the majority of the year and for the most part is that they didn't play top teams. They didn't play any of these like Kansas schools, or if they did, it was way back at the start of the year. Like UW played Baylor. That was UW's first game of the year. You look at the best team that Oregon played out of conference, I guess you would have to say it's Missouri. Oregon's first game of the year was against Missouri. Missouri ended up finishing 16-10. The other out of conference schools that Oregon played were small schools. For USC, you look at the best school that they played out of conference, and it'd be BYU towards the start of the season back in December. USC won that game by 26. For UCLA, the best non-conference game they played was, I'd guess, November 25th. They played San Diego State, and they lost to San Diego State 15. And then you look at Oregon State, that team that made it to the tournament by being hot at the end. Well, I don't know who their best out-of-conference game was. I mean, they lost to Wyoming. They lost to Portland. So I guess one of those teams were the best non-conference games they played. So just the Pac-12 didn't play big non-conference games. They didn't have those tournaments that they went through. Like most years, these teams would be going to tournaments where other top 25 ranked teams would all be playing. And I think that hurt Pac-12 by just not getting national recognition. Now, looking at tournament as we stand now, Oregon State, I think, actually has really the best shot at making it to the national championship game, as they've got the easiest route. In the Sweet 16, they're playing 8th seed Loyola Chicago, who you can't take them for granted as they took down the 1 seed. But if they manage to pull that win off, then they'd be facing 2 seed Houston or Syracuse. Hard matchups, but not impossible. And then, of course, if they manage to get through that in the Final Four, they'd be playing either Baylor, Villanova, Arkansas, or Oral Roberts. Now, looking at UCLA, they probably got the toughest route. They play Alabama in the Sweet 16, the 2 seed Alabama. They then would play either Michigan or Florida State. So a much harder route than Oregon State. Of course, then you have USC and Oregon, who in the Sweet 16 are, unfortunately, they're matched up to play each other, I guess. You could look at that positive saying one team's guaranteed to make it to the Elite Eight. So now, whichever one of those teams win, they're then going to be playing either crave or the overall number 1 seed in Gonzaga, which I can see Oregon or USC beating Gonzaga. Oregon's a very well-rounded team, while USC is a very, very good defensive team. They've got that 7-foot tall freshman Evan Mobley, and overall they're just very lanky and lengthy. They've got I think one of the best defenses in the country. I think I saw they allow the lowest 2-point field goal percentage in the country just because of how many blocks they get. But now that's it for really just previewing March Madness tournament for Pac-12 and getting into Husky football. So looking at this week, I'll be looking at the running back room, and the running back room's very deep. They lost nobody from last year, and they gained one more player in three-star freshman Caleb Berry. In total, the Huskies have 7 scholarship running backs who will be fighting for touches, I guess you could say, next year. Figuring out who is gonna be the best of that bunch is gonna be tough, I think, because I think there's a lot of good guys who could really play great this upcoming season. Last season, the main runner for Washington seemed to be Sean McGrew, but even he just ran for 227 yards and 4 touchdowns in 4-game year. He did have a great yards per carry number at 5.3. And it's clear to me with what happened last year, Jimmy Lake's probably going to want to have a running back by committee room again, which in some ways is good as you're always going to be having a fresh running back there running the ball. But in other ways, it's hard for these running backs to then get in a groove sometimes, really feel out the game and get momentum going and build off of that as the game continues and as you get into the fourth quarter. One reason I feel that the Huskies did rely on the running back by committee approach last year is Jimmy Lake and John Donovan didn't have any confidence in one single player for the Huskies to really carry them on the ground. The Huskies committee was usually 3 or 4 guys getting touches last year per game. And those 4 were Sean McGrew, Kamari Pleasant, Richard Newton, and Cam Davis. Pleasant, I already mentioned what Sean McGrew did last year. He had 227 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5.3 yards per carry. Pleasant finished with 144 yards, 3 touchdowns, 4.3 yards per carry. And then there's Richard Newton, who had 122 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 5.3 yards. Cameron Davis, as a redshirt freshman last year, had 67 yards, no touchdowns, 4.5 yards per carry. No other running back for Washington had a carry. Looking at these stats, what really confuses me the most is Richard Newton's numbers. You look at those numbers and then you look at the games. He put up the 122 yards and 2 touchdowns in just the first 2 games, as for the last 2 games of the year, he didn't find the field. He watched them from the sidelines. And we never really got a solid reason as to why Richard Newton didn't play the last 2 games. Jimmy Lake was asked about it, and his answer was just, we're going to play the guys that are ready to go. That doesn't really give us anything. So who knows what that really means? I mean, Newton in his first 2 games looked ready to go. His last touch of the year was against Arizona. It was a 54-yard touchdown run. After that, he never got the ball. So it's going to be really tough to figure out the rotation for running backs this year, as who knows what's going to be going on with Newton. Are we going to see the 2019 version of Richard Newton, where he had 11 touchdowns leading the team on touchdowns? Or are we going to see the 2020 Newton, who got benched for an unknown reason? If Newton's back and is in good graces and playing great football again, then I see no reason why he shouldn't be the bell cow back. He's shown that he has the talent. He has the size, 6 feet tall, 210 pounds. I mean, that's what I think holds Sean McGrew back from being that bell cow back. He's too small. He's 5'7" inches tall and 175 pounds. I like McGrew. I think he's a great gadget back, but he shouldn't be a team's leading back. Now, if Newton does not return to form in 2019, or his return to his 2019 form, then things for the Huskies start to get a bit more interesting. Personally, I've never really been a big fan of Kamari Pleasant. I don't think he has what it takes to be kind of a key back in college football. Pleasant's best year was 2018, when he had 42 carries for 214 yards, averaging 5.1 yards per game and 2 touchdowns. That was, of course, Myles Gaskin's senior year. So Kamari Pleasant was kind of the power back, I guess you could say, in that situation. Now, Now, so who would be kind of the first and second down back, I guess you could say, with McGrew kind of being a gadget back, I guess you could say, that you can implement on third downs, as well as Kamari Pleasant being someone to implement on third and short. I look at kind of three options. If Richard Newton's not the coach's good graces again, you could look towards Javon Sunday, Sam Adams the second, or Campus taking a bigger role. Like I said earlier, Davis played last year, but not that much. And in the short time that he did play, I really felt that he showed something and really impressed the coaches. The coaches, when talked about him, did compliment him, thought he did a good job. So I think Davis definitely has a leg up on the other two guys, as Sunday and Adams both redshirted last year and didn't appear in any games. The coaches have felt that they simply have had enough depth that they've wanted to kind of ease in these freshmen. Now with Sean McGrew, Kamari Pleasant coming back for fifth year, is it time to mix these guys together and have a younger player play a lot, or do they stick with what they've been doing and have the veterans really take the reins? Now, that's really going to be the decision the coaches have to make. Is it to ride with a younger player who might offer more upside, or is it keep what you're doing, keep that committee approach going with McGrew, Pleasant, and Cameron Davis taking more and more touches? But now getting into my final topic of the day. It's which new player for the Huskies I feel is going to be making the biggest impact. The Huskies freshman class has only 15 players, and it's a smaller class simply because they didn't have as many scholarships they needed to give out, as because of coronavirus and COVID, the seniors are eligible for another year of eligibility. So a lot of them chose to come back. And out of those 15 players, realistically, I only see two of them possibly having an impact next year. Those two are, of course, both Trinity Catholic guys, Sam Heward and Jabez Tane. And really, it's those two guys because of their positions. Sam Heward at quarterback and Jabez Tane at wide receiver. Because if you look at talent-wise, you could easily argue that Owen Prentice could play. But then you look at the Huskies' offensive line and see how deep it is, and you just don't need to play a true freshman. You then look at Will Latu, the four-star linebacker. And again, you look at it like the Huskies kind of have a lot of linebacker depth. Not that their linebackers have been very good, but they do have a number of guys that would clearly be ahead of Will Latu. The QB position, however, it's got Dylan Morris, who last year, as a redshirt freshman, he played all four games, started all four games, but he didn't really shine, in my opinion. And that's what leaves the door open for Sam Heward to come in as a true freshman and win that starting job. Or maybe Sam Heward doesn't win it right away, but if Dylan Morris struggles at the start of the year and start a conference play, maybe you move to Sam Heward to try and put a spark in this Husky offense. And looking at the wide receiver room for Jabez Tane, it's beginning to look thinner and thinner by the day. As we know, Jordan Chin, Ty Jones, and Puka Nacua all transferred already. You then look at Austin Osborne, Marquis Spiker as guys who have been rumored to be looking to transfer. And if that happens, all of a sudden the Huskies have lost 5 wide receivers from last year. They're left with just 7 or 8 scholarship guys out there. Tane coming in as a 4-star player. And especially if Sam Heward wins the starting job, he's got that chemistry with his quarterback already from day one. So I expect him to play really well at the start of spring ball and throughout spring ball, help him earn not the starting wide receiver position job, but just a rotation in the wide receiver room. You look at first glance with the Huskies wide receivers they have at the moment, I'd have to put Tane at either the 5th or 6th wide receiver on the roster. either just ahead of Sawyer Racanelli or just behind him, depending on how much Sawyer Racanelli has done in the offseason, what he's really looking like. As he didn't play that much last year. He was a 3-star, I believe, coming out of high school, but he could have easily been a 4-star. He got that 3-star as he tore his ACL his senior year. So really, the first 4, I think, are pretty obvious for the Huskies. Terrell Bynum, Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk. Polk is a new guy who I could see making a big impact for the Huskies. He's from Texas Tech, where he had 28 catches, 264 yards, and 2 touchdowns his true freshman there last year. He played in 10 games, and he actually started 7 of those 10 games. So besides Bynum, he's now the guy with the second most experience on the college football field. At 6'2", 190 pounds, Polk is kind of an ideal wide receiver size, a guy who can't be like overshadowed or can't be overpowered by a cornerback, but then also has enough speed to beat a cornerback. He's also a guy with great hands, as last year at Texas Tech as a freshman, he recorded 0 drops. Something that could hold him back, however, is just the Huskies' offense. The Huskies aren't an offense that's going to be slinging the ball around, passing it 40 times or maybe even 30 times a game. Jimmy Lake is a coach that wants to run the ball and run the ball a lot and often. So that's definitely going to kind of limit Polk's opportunities, as well as just all the receivers' opportunities to really shine at Washington. Someone who I see that is at a position that Washington kind of has a history of being great at and really helping these guys succeed both in college and into the NFL is Brendan Radley Hiles, also known as Buki. Now, after doing a bit of research on Buki, I'm really just sold on him. I'm all in on him, and I think he should be one of the starting defensive backs for the Huskies at game 1 this next season. He's got good stats. He's been at Oklahoma the past 3 years. He was a key contributor / starter, starting a lot of games. A couple of games he didn't start. But in those 3 years of him starting on and off again, he had 112 tackles, 10 pass deflections, 3 interceptions, 1 sack, and 1 touchdown. Coming out of high school, he was a highly rated 4-star or 5-star cornerback, depending on which site you look at. He was also the 5th-ranked cornerback in his class. And he's a guy that's not just a great player on the field, but also just a great guy off the field. As RJ Young, someone who's knowledgeable on Oklahoma football, he's a reporter. He was talking about Buki and how he was entering the transfer portal and how he said that everyone he's really talked to about Buki and everyone that's really talked to Buki or knows Buki really just has nothing but positive reviews on him as a leader, as a teammate, and as a friend. That's the type of person you want to have on your football team. You want to have someone who is beloved by absolutely everyone. Now, even Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma's head coach, when asked about him entering the transfer portal, he said how much he loves the guy and how he hopes that he chooses to come back to Oklahoma and compete for another chance at the national championship. But he said if Buki decides to leave and head somewhere else, then he's going to be his number 1 fan. Now, Lincoln Riley is the coach he didn't have to say that. He didn't have to try and almost re-recruit Buki to Oklahoma. A lot of coaches don't do that. Most of the times when someone's transferring, you don't hear the coach saying he really hopes he comes back and stuff like that. That just shows how much of an impact Buki makes just at Oklahoma and made at Oklahoma. Now, in high school, he was an absolute shutdown, man-to-man, outside cornerback at IMG Academy. At Oklahoma, because of his size, standing at 5'9", 180 pounds, he was really moved to the slot for Oklahoma because of that size. I mean, and the slot cornerback position is in my opinion, and a lot of experts' opinions and a lot of people's opinions, is one of the harder positions to play on a football field just because of how many options the receiver has. If you're an outside cornerback, then you basically have two defenders. It's you and the sideline. You can force the receiver outside where because he can't just run outside. If he's in the slot, he can take off to the left or to the outside running a wheel route, run a slant to the in, just run the flats. You can run any route in the route tree. A slot corner or nickel corner, they've got to play two-way go where they have to cover the inside and outside releases, making hip flexibility and just change of direction so important for them. Slot corner also is a guy asked to rush the passer more often. He's also a guy that's asked to cover the tight end more often, who in slot corners, especially Buki's case, is going to be 5+ inches taller, 60+ pounds heavier. And Buki made that transition, not going to say seamlessly, as he definitely had a few faults and definitely had a few errors he made, but he did really good at the slot corner position. Oklahoma's defensive coordinator, Alex Grinch, gave a raving review about how good of a player he is. Now, what frustrated Oklahoma fans was the personal foul calls on him and just the unnecessary activity that he did on the football field with late hits and just those type of fouls. And a lot of those fouls and penalties are just from Buki playing hard out and laying everything on the field, which I know is an excuse, but it shows his passion he has. And what RJ Young touched on was how if you play him at the position that he wants to play and that he's meant to play, isolated one-on-one on the outside, with just him and the receiver, a lot of those penalties will go away as he's on an island, which that's true. I mean, you look at it, a slot corner guy is kind of in the middle of the field. He's got to play safety sometimes, dropping back into the middle zone. He's all over the place, running side to side. A one-on-one isolated corner just has him and the receiver. That's who he's going to be battling every single snap of the game. Now, I hope that the Huskies kind of overlook his size and line him up on the outside corner because I think he'll succeed. I think that the Huskies have an opening at the outside corner spot with Keith Taylor gone. I think Kyler Gordon can replace Elijah Molden on the slot corner spot. And then just have Buki play the outside corner spot, which is what he's kind of good at, what he's best at, playing man-to-man, one-on-one cornerback with the outside receiver. And I just hope Brendan Radley-Hiles is given that opportunity, as he's going to have a huge impact on the Husky defense. And he's going to become a fan favorite, I think, if he does. He's a guy that I think his Husky teammates will really learn to love and appreciate just because he's a great mentor to the younger players. That's what he was at Oklahoma, a great mentor to these freshmen. And Brendan also just has an amazing story that I hope all Husky fans look up and read. Just a short part of it is it starts with a 17-year-old named Brandon Webb, who was shot in 1995 while preparing to play college football at Grambling. 4 years later, Brandon Webb's brother was born to his mother, and his brother was Brendan Radley-Hiles, so Buki. And Buki never met his brother, but he plays for that brother that he never met. In an interview about how he gets through these difficult moments is that he says he has no choice but to keep going. For him, I'm living for both of us, talking about his brother. Now, Buki wears number 44 for Brandon, as that's the number that Brandon Webb wore when he was going to be going to Grambling. Buki also plays kind of like his brother. Buki is a smaller guy, 5'9", 180 pounds. Well, his brother was a bigger guy. He played linebacker, defensive line. So Buki just runs around the field. And if you want to see his energy and his power and his hits, look up Brendan Radley-Hiles hit against Kansas State, and you can see him just laying out a tight end. Now, that's just some background information and just why I hope he's going to succeed at UW, and then both just why I think he is going to succeed at UW, as he's an overall great football player, I feel. Now, that is just about all the time I have for today. Again, I'm your host, Nathan Mathisen, where you can find my @ the screen below me. Now, I'm just a small part of the Dash Sports family. If you'd like to meet the rest of the crew, check out our website, dashsports.tv. That's where you can find as many clips, quips, tips, rips, terrible jokes, and as many full episodes as you can stand, all in one place, all at once, all for free. Dashsports.tv. I'll see you next week with more Husky football news, where I'll finally be talking about the QB room, talking about Sam Heward, talking about Dylan Morris. But until then, I'll see you next time. This is Husky Dash signing off. Thank you.